It was a relatively slow week for the Texans last week in terms of news and whatnot. So I was happy that Will Anderson was out doing the media rounds because he's doing some charity work and promoting USAA. So we got some really good, just vintage Will Anderson, pure beam of energy and positivity, which he somehow balances out with playing like a crazed maniac on the football field. So I wanted to just kind of take a look at Will Anderson and how he's developed over the last couple of years and where he needs to continue to go if he wants to ascend to be an all-pro caliber defensive end, to be up there amongst the sack leaders perennially and whatnot. And I think he's on the right path. This is Will Anderson talking about just what he needs to improve on this season. And a lot of it sounds pretty similar to what he said this time around last year. You're gonna hear him reference the pro grow tape. So that's what he's talking about when he says pro grow. It's the little the items, the action items that the coaches give to the players that they need to work on improving in the offseason.
Yeah, most definitely. It's so crazy because that was my one of my pro grows with my coach again when we had our meeting before OTA started, and that's really just being consistently doing the move, whatever move I do it consistently at the highest point as possible. And for me, it's just perfecting my long arm, man, and just straining that step through and using my power stuff and just making all my rushes look the same. So that's been my next step of how can I make everything I do look the exact same where they don't know what I'm going to do at this point. And it's been great to have Coach Rod. I have to give a shout out to him, man, because he's been a fantastic D-line coach, where he's taking us, what he's doing, the energy that he brings.
So, and a lot of that stuff that he's talking about is what he had talked about last year. What do you do at the top of the rush? What do you do right when you're getting to the level of the quarterback and it's time to separate and get to the quarterback? He needs to create separation. He did a great job of improving on that throughout his rookie season. He built on that this year. But just to revisit what people were saying about him his rookie year or going into the draft, some of the anonymous scouts from Bob McGinn on Go Long TD had this to say about him, and I'll play his highlights from this year just for the hell of it because it's fun. So this is a quote, not me talking. I like the guy, but there's nothing special with this guy at all. Not a true edge burst athlete rushing the passer. Most of his production is just that stunting stuff they do and his hustle. The run stuff is hit or miss. Sometimes he can get his length on guys, but he gets washed out a lot. Not great in space, not a silky athlete with a lot of range, not overly big either. He's safe. You kind of want more from him, but at the same time, the way they have their defensive line play, they're not really enabled to be tremendously productive pass rushers. Good athlete, strong, really good technician, smart. Aiden Hutchinson is a pretty fair comparison. They're very similar. I don't know that Will Anderson will get much better. And then one other guy I went to gush about what a great guy he is. He might be one of the greatest kids ever. His family and everything. You want to adopt him for your son. He's an all-American kid. I think a lot of that jibes with what people were. I think some of it, even though it's on the pessimistic side, was an accurate description of what he was as a college player, where he played in a scheme. When they moved him down to have his hand in the dirt, he wasn't playing on edges. He wasn't cocked out wide and just going hell-bent for leather for the quarterback. They had him playing almost like guys doing a 3-4 and a gap control defense. So he ended up not being as productive or as flashy in his last year of college as he was the previous year. But when it came to the pass rush side of things, he was a guy who was a run around guy. He just had incredible hustle. He had really good strength, but he didn't show a lot of polish. So that was one of the big question marks about him was, all right, what's this going to look like when he gets to the NFL? And if you look at him in his rookie year, I mean, there was a whole lot of that just bull in a china shop, but where he realized that, this china's made of Kevlar, really, really large chunks of Kevlar, because there was a lot of running into dudes. It was a lot of, like, instead of trying to work edges, he would get into a guy and he would keep his legs moving, but his upper body would die. And you can see when they talk about separation at the top of the rush right there, that's where he wasn't necessarily doing a great job separating. So he would lead the league at various points early in his rookie year on things like pressures and hurries and all of that. And some of those were the GPS pressures and stats where it showed that he got close to the quarterback, but he wasn't completing the deal. And he had that first sack in the Ravens game, but then there was a long drought. And a lot of people were sticking up for him, saying like, look, he's leading the league in pressures. Sacks are overrated. Will Anderson himself said, no, I got to finish these and get to them. And then he got a lot better as the season went along. So like this was from his rookie season. This is one of my favorite ones. He does in this Broncos game. This is exactly what you wanted to see out of him more consistently. All right, he's going to head into his power rush right there, right? But boom, he's owning the outside shoulder, but so he's got that hand with good position, but then he pins the other arm, and then he swims over, and his arms never stop moving. His arms are moving in conjunction with his legs, and he got better and better at that as his rookie year went along, and then he built on that this year. As 9 sacks his rookie year, ends up with 11 sacks this year, plus a few in the postseason. Very good performance in the postseason, including that Kansas City game and including that bogus penalty that he had. But if you think about defensive linemen, the really good pass rushers, their hands and their feet work together. So like when you're and your hands are clearing the way for your feet to get there. In college and in his rookie year, there were times where he was trying to get his feet to take him everywhere, but his hands weren't tied to his feet. So it's a difference between, let's say you're trying to work your way through the rainforest and you're just going and trying to just running into the biggest trees. That's how you're trying to get through the rainforest. This year he figured out, no, it's better to have a couple of machetes and clear away the undergrowth, which would be the arms of the offensive tackles, and then my feet can take me there. And he did a really good job of it. These are some of his power rushes from 2025 or 2024, where you can see the difference. And again, he was doing this a lot his rookie year. He was just more consistent with it, and it ended up with more production. See that? Arms kept him. He hit his move immediately after he hit the long arm. Just boom, power hits the inside, separates. And the other thing that he's doing when he talks about making everything look the same is that now teams are recognizing, offensive linemen are recognizing that they got to account for his power rush. And then he added this enough of a shimmy, and he's moving forward the entire time with his shimmy, where he just created more open doors and an easier path. A lot of it's like work smarter, not harder. Right there, his rookie year, the first half of his rookie year, he would have turned that into a bull rush. Here he keeps working, gets the separation, then makes his move. It helped that that one anonymous scout had said that he didn't know if he could get much bigger. He's done grown, man. He went through that second puberty that offensive players sometimes go through. The other big part that I like about the dynamic of Will Anderson right now was the addition of Danielle Hunter. And Danielle Hunter is obviously very valuable to him. I think if you just looked at the team building or the roster building, they let Jonathan Grenard walk. Jonathan Grenard goes on to have a really good year in Minnesota, and Danielle Hunter comes here, and you wonder, all right, well, should they have paid that money to Jonathan Grenard? Yeah, I would have loved to have Jonathan Grenard here too, but Danielle Hunter and the way he goes about his business and being a mentor for Will Anderson on the technique side of things is huge. And Will, when he talks about this, is interesting. You know, he said before, look, I'm a different type of pass rusher than Danielle Hunter. I'm not going to try to copy all the stuff that he does, because Danielle Hunter has a Gumby-like ability to do all these crazy things, like a martial arts artist with the benefit of CGI or something. You can't get CGI as a PED. So Will's going to do his game, and it's going to be much more of a power-oriented game. But I think on the emotional side of things too, Danielle Hunter is a good influence on Will Anderson.
Shout out to Danielle, man. He's been a double-digit guy. Sack guy since he's been in the league, and to see his process and to see, he doesn't worry about those things. He's just like, bro, I'm just going out there and playing. I think that's been able to help me and calm me down. And I always tell people we're like fire and ice. When I look at Danielle, my fire just woosah, because he just brings that presence. Like, it's gonna be okay, bro. You're gonna get it. So just lucky to have him and blessed to have him on the team.
Yeah, and in one of that same interview, they asked what his goal was. He said double-digit sacks. That's all I care about, double-digit sacks. Again, going back to that rookie year when people were harping on his pressures, even though he wasn't producing sacks, in any given year, in an individual year, it's unfair to compare guys based just on sacks. You can have 12 sacks in one year and have a much better season than another year where he had 18 or 19 sacks, because there's a little bit of luck involved. The guys who are genuinely great pass rushers tend to consistently have double-digit sacks. It just works out that way. That mentality, though, is almost that Will was referencing. It's almost like a baseball player where there's sometimes where, man, you're making hard contact. You got the right launch angle. You got a baseball savant and everything says you should be playing really well. And you got to look at your expected batting average instead of your actual batting average because it's about the process. And with pass rushers, it's the same way. You have 500, 600 pass rushing snaps in a season. And if you get 20 sacks out of those, you've had one of the best seasons of all time. So there's a whole lot of getting close but no cigar. And Danielle's a guy who understands that, and that you're going to go through weeks. Great pass rushers tend to stack up a bunch of multi-sack games a few times, but then they might have a drought of 2 or 3 weeks where they don't have one. And Will, as kind of hot wired as he is, not in terms of temper, but just energy, press. I think it's good to have that calming woo-saw influence of Danielle Hunter. And the other big thing too, if we're talking about just sack production, and I know sack production is not by far the sum total of everything that makes a good defensive end, but when it comes to the sack production, Will being on the field and just staying healthy, A, and then B, perhaps getting a few more reps in the rotation, depending on how they choose to use them. He had over 100 fewer snaps than Trey Hendrickson, one of the All-Pros this year, of pass rush snaps, and he had about 200 fewer snaps than Max Crosby. So some of it is just simply, okay, the actual production by way of being on the field is something that gets you up into that echelon. And the run defense and everything else, I feel really good about it. I don't quite have time. I saw this question. I can't get to everybody's comments. Is there anything he needs to do physically to become a better edge rusher? Bulk up, slim down. I think he's just exactly on the right path in terms of what he needs to do physically. He looks like he's put on quality muscle from year 1 to year 2. I mean, just based on limited OTA footage and whatnot, it looks like he might have just gotten a little bulkier, but he's not a pure speed guy, so I don't worry about him losing speed. Nick Bosa is probably a good example in terms of height, weight, power, and all of that. And if you look at Nick Bosa, he's kind of like Will. He doesn't have super fluid hips the way Danielle Hunter does, but he gets it done with really good technique and then using his power really effectively. Bosa takes a huge, gigantic first step that I think Will could incorporate, but Will gets off the ball really fast. So I think he's right about where he needs to be. I think a lot of it is just continuing to get the muscle memory going of getting your upper body and lower body working in conjunction. And that's another big part of it. We go back to the way he was used at Alabama and how raw he was as a pass rusher. Nick Bosa was the opposite. Nick Bosa had been being groomed to be a great defensive end since high school, and he was very, very polished. So, that takes reps. It takes time. A lot of the stuff that Will Anderson is working on right now, when they talk about shin angle, like your ability to get lean coming around the corner, that's stuff that J.J. Watt was working on in high school that I think that Will hadn't had exposure to that type of stuff. So physically, there are little tweaking things that he needs to be working on right now, and I know he is. But a lot of it is just getting the reps and getting the mindset right in terms of just again, like a batter, really experienced major league batters have the right approach at the plate. They got a plan for each pitcher, the same way great pass rushers have a plan for each offensive tackle. So I just think he's on the right path. Could be a very big year. The other big thing that helps him is the secondary being as good as they are. No pass rushers love awesome secondaries because the ball is sometimes held a lot longer than it should be, or at the very least, the nice thing about playing for this Texans team, there's nothing worse than getting a good hit on the quarterback and then seeing a completed pass downfield. At the very least, the sweet spot, and one of the best things you can do if you're not going to get a strip sack, is force an interception. Texans were second in the league in interceptions last year, and they added one more opportunistic player in C.J. Gardner-Johnson. So I'm looking forward to this year for multiple reasons, but individually, very excited for Will Anderson.